So let's go into edit mode with the cube still selected. So press tab, into edit mode, and now we can see the sub-object level of the geometry that is currently being used by this object. So we'll select one of the vertices. If you're not seeing the vertex mode selected up here, then you can press this button, or you can press number 1 on the keyboard to select the vertex mode. And now we can modify the position of these vertices. So I'll select one vertex, and now you can press G, and you can move around the same as you could before. So GZ, GX, or GY. And we can also rotate. Now the problem is, obviously, we can't rotate around itself. If I rotate that vertex, it's not going to rotate anywhere. So what we need to do is rotate it around something else. So let's go to the pivot point again, and we'll change this to 3D cursor. And as I rotate now, you can see we get this dashed line, which ends at the 3D cursor down here. And the longer I make this line, the more accurate it is. And the shorter the line is, we can move the mouse less for a bigger movement of the actual vertex. We can also press Shift to slow it right down, so it's even more accuracy, or Control to make it faster in steps, like so. So that's actually using snapping, which we'll come to in a second. Now let's say I want to rotate around one of the other vertices. So let's select multiple vertices now by holding Shift, and we'll left click another vertex, and you'll notice this one now becomes the brighter one, and this one is just yellow. So this one's selected, but this one is selected and it's the active one. So this will allow us to change the pivot point to active element. So if I rotate now, you'll see the line ends at that active vertex and the other one is rotating around it. If I shift click this one, this will be the active one, and now these two are going to rotate around that one. And if I want to scale, the same thing, I'll press S and it's going to scale towards the active element, or I can change it again to the 3D cursor, scale it down, and we're going to scale down towards that 3D cursor. And again, if I select these two, so click this one, shift click this one, scale it down, they're going to scale down to that 3D cursor. Selection wise, we can turn on the X-ray view. So we can either press it here, or again, we can use Z like we did before and press toggle X-ray. And now we can see all the way through the cube so that we can select the elements that would otherwise be out of view. So you can box select like so, and then you can shift box select to add to the selection, or you can control box select to remove elements from the selection. And this works the same in object mode as well. And in edit mode, we've also got something called proportional editing, which allows us to select one or a number of vertices and then move the other ones that aren't selected as well. And the amount the non-selected ones move is based on a fall off. So we can turn it on up here, or we can press O as the shortcut. So O will turn it on and off, and then we can choose a fall off method if you want a different shape. So if I now move this one, change the fall off by using the mouse wheel, scrolling it up and down to affect a bigger or a smaller surrounding area of that cube. In later versions of Blender, it may be Alt mouse wheel. And if we change the pivot point to be the active element again, you can see the fall off is going to be there. So I'll select 2 and then scale, and I use the mouse wheel to change the fall off area. So I'll press Z and I'll turn toggle X-ray back off. And now if I just click anywhere on the screen, it will deselect everything, or I can press A to select everything, or A again twice will deselect everything. And then lastly, we've got snapping. So I'll just turn proportional editing back off, and we can either turn snapping on permanently, or we can just hold the control key down while we move something. So I'm going to use the control key method, but I want to tell it what do I want to snap to. At the moment, it's going to snap to the 3D grid. So we've got other options. We've got vertices, so we can snap to other vertices, edges, faces. Say, for example, you want to plant something exactly onto a face, you can snap to that. And various other options as well, which we may cover later in the course, if necessary. So I'll leave it on increment for now, the grid snapping, and we'll choose one of the vertices. This one was just fine. I'm going to press G to move, and then I'm going to hold the control key down to turn on snapping. And now it's going to be snapping to the, we're just going to top view, make it a bit easier. Move this one. And I'll do G, Control, and now it's going to snap to the 3D grid, but it's also going to keep the original offset. So you can see it's not exactly on the 3D grid originally. If I want to change that, I can come to here and turn on absolute grid snap, and now when I move, it's going to snap exactly onto those grid points. Turn that back off. And if the shortcut for this is Control Shift Tab, and this will bring the menu up so you don't have to go up here. So let's try turning on snapping to vertices. So Control Shift Tab, turn it to vertex, and now when I move this vertex, so I'll select that vertex, press G, hold Control, and then move across to one of the vertices, and you'll see as soon as I get close to the vertex with the mouse, it's going to snap onto it. Now you might not want it to snap exactly onto the vertex, you might want it to just move in a set direction, but then align with another vertex. So if I press G, select this one, I'll press G, Y, and now hold Control, it's going to only move on the Y-axis, but still snap to this one, so that it's aligned on the Y-axis. Again, if I move this one, I'll do GX this time, and now it's only going to be able to move on the X-axis, but still be able to snap to whichever one we choose. Alright, so before you move on, I want you to try using all the 3 different element modes that we've got at the top here, such as the vertex, the edge, and the faces, and try moving them, rotating them, and scaling them, both individually, but also in groups. Try all the different selection methods. So we've got the box selections, the single selections, where we can add or subtract a selection, selecting through an object, either with the X-ray mode or with the wireframe mode. Try out the different transform coordinate options, so the transform orientations, such as global and local. And if you can work out what normal is, that's a bonus. I'll give you a clue. It's basically a little line that sticks out from the middle of each element. If you can turn them on, in fact, over here, you can see we've got the vertex normals and the face normals. They're basically just little lines that pop out from the current element which average the surrounding geometry. And they're used for shading, which we'll get to later, to make things look smooth if you want to. But they're also useful for transforming along. For example, if you want to, let's choose face mode. If I want to move this on its normal, so change this to normal, and then G, Z to move it along the Z axis, which is the normal. But if I say I rotate that, I can then move it in the normal direction by doing GZ again. So basically the normal becomes the Z axis. And for an even bigger bonus, if you want to, try and set your own transform orientation. And the way this is done is by clicking the little plus sign after you've selected an element. So let's say I select this face here, and I want to use this as the transform orientation for different elements. So I'll go into here, and I'll just click plus, and now we've got that set as the transform orientation. So if I now move, let's say, this face here, and I move it on the, let's go with the Y, it's going to be moving on the Y-axis of the face, which we've set to be the transform orientation. And if we choose Z, it's going to move along that face's Z-axis, which basically, again, is the normal of the face. So try those out. Make sure also that you try the different pivot points so that when you're rotating and things or scaling, you can get a different result. And try the snapping options. So all these different snapping options we've got that we've covered. You don't need to bother with all these that we've got down here unless you want to. And then also the proportion editing. Try having a go with that with different fall-offs. And if you can, try and memorize the shortcuts for these as well. So Control-Shift-Tab for the snapping and O for the proportion editing. And then also 1, 2, and 3 to change the current element that you're working with. And you can select 2 of these at once if you really want to by pressing Shift and then the number, or even 3, so you can do that. Alright, so have a play around with that. Make sure you become really familiar with this. It should become second nature that you can do these things, so that'll make it much easier for you, not only in your own projects, but to follow along with the rest of the course as well. So best of luck, and I'll see you shortly.